Welcome to today's Seidokan Saturday. Moving on to requirements for Shodan. This is the last video sequence segments that I will do will take you to Shodan. From there on, it's going to be more general principles again. Passai Sho kata. Now, on my other channel, I posted Max getting his black belt doing Passai Sho, and someone commented, "What is this crap?" And I had to enlighten them that not everybody does the same version of every kata. Our Passai Sho is not the Chibana Choshin Anko Itosu lineage that came to Funakoshi that became Passai Dai and Passai Sho. Go back to the old video I did on Passai where I talk about the different hand formations, the different positions. Some go here, press. I mentioned I even experimented with a version where on each turn I would do 1, 2, 3, and then turn 1, 2, 3, and do all three in each direction of the variations that exist in different Shodan systems. Matsubayashi does this version, other Shodan systems do this version, we do this version with the block and spear. So everybody's a little bit different in that regard on their Passai and seems to be accepted. And yet when we do a Passai Sho that's outside of their lineage, oh no, this came through Motobu Chomu Uchima Ai to his son Uchima Ai to Toma sensei, not the Chibana Choshin lineage Anko Itosu. Now, it's very Passai-ish. You'll recognize some of the movements that fit within the standard Passai pattern, but again, it is outside of that lineage. Even within Seidokan, where I love that we allow these differences, we've never set and standardized. Probably the closest to standardization that ever came was when Rani and Tamai sensei were all in Toma's dojo doing things on a regular basis together in the mid-80s through the mid-90s, and then things started to split away again. But that seemed to be the period of probably the closest to stylistic unification that we had in Seidokan. But the differences are so minor that it's not important. Some do their kata to compete, and so there's a performance aspect and an emphasis on certain types of snappier movement as opposed to the more hara, gamaku-centered power, more internal power rather than overt power. The difference between a movie punch where the guy has to see it coming as opposed to a real fight where we don't even want him to see it coming. And even spectators a lot of times don't see the punch or the elbow that knocks a guy out in boxing and MMA. That's the ideal. You don't want them to see it coming, and if you can do it so that nobody sees it, even better. So there are different aspects to performance versus practice of kata for its functionality. That said, those differences are less important, but what we have within even our Seidokan Brotherhood are small differences such as, right from the get-go, this movement forward. Is your hand all the way on the fist or slightly separated? It's supposed to be separated if you go back to the older Toma videos, but if it's touching, does that really affect anything? Same as in Passai, where they do this. Our Passai is here, Passai, Passai Sho, Passai Sho. How much difference is there really? Is that super vital? Do the version that fits your application. Next, on the turns where we go block, punch, punch, or punch, return block, whatever you're interpreting that to be. Some do outward block, low block, outward block. Others do block, punch, and return. Block, punch, and return, which is how I do it. The way it is in the old Toma teaching, the way Tomai does it in that rec hall kind of yellowy video that we have of Tomai sensei doing all the forms. So that's how that is done a little differently among some. Also on the older video with Toma, he's off at an angle, not a full 45 Okinawan, but a slight angle from center. Very much like the Odo no Teko ichi, where we step to a front stance, but we're actually punching this way, step to a forward stance, but we're actually punching this way before then coming back on center line. There's also the versions of Pinyan Shodan in some Shodan systems where following the knife hands, we do shikodachi, but following these knife hands in their cat stance, they would turn and block and actually be at this angle and then kick, punch at that angle, and then block at this angle, kick. So there's slight anglings in the movement. That has to do with me coming around and blocking or breaking his elbow, and as I do that, his body moves to that position. So if I'm breaking his elbow here with this and then punching in the rib, then it makes sense that I'm coming slightly off angle for that. That's the older version. To do it forward, does that really change anything? No, I can still do the application the same way, regardless of the geometry of the embusen of the kata. Another little difference, when we do the stacked fist, which would go sideways, but front to camera, when we do the stacked fist knee lift, some lift the knee, step straight forward, yamatsuki, or yamazuki. Straight up, straight forward. Others scoop the knee around. Scoop the knee around. Both okay, okay? I'm blocking your kick, or I'm pulling you in and kneeing you to the rib, as we have in Seisan Kata, this version. Similar thing, but now I'm pulling in more closely to my body, similar thing, and then executing the throw. I say this as a throw because to me, outside of a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, that Yamatsuki is a double punch. Not really going to see it other than in the movie Bloodsport. But you will see it as a throw throughout sumo, Greco-Roman wrestling, etc. And the old Okinawa sumo, where you attach to the guy's belt, also very much that kind of a throw. Just my interpretation, you do you. Another difference is how much lean we have here. And again, if I'm throwing, I'm going to lean more, but as a karate convention, we tend to keep things more upright. Now this is also very similar to what we have in Seisan Anaku, or in Passai also. We have this high block, middle block position, which again, very much a tweety, similar kind of a movement going on with this. So in terms of interpretation and how we perform the movement. What's another little difference we have? Oh, at the end, some, after the block, punch, punch, kick, punch sequence, keep their center of gravity here and draw their cat stance in to that, or sorry, keep their front foot stable and move the center of gravity over it as they draw the front foot in. Cat stance starts forward, 90. Move to the other foot, start forward, 90. In other dojos, depending on who your teacher was and which his preference was, instead of moving my center of gravity, I actually replace my foot under that center of gravity and then pull this foot in and go slightly off angle to 90, pull in under my center of gravity, slightly off angle to 90. Now, even in the slightly off angle, as I step, I'm actually hitting here. This is a stopping point, but I'm coming through this position to get to this position before turning to here. So they're all interconnected and interrelated. Those kinds of little differences we don't really squabble about, which is, as much as I like standardization of things, I like the ability, the opportunity, I guess, if you will, to have a style where our teacher, Master Toma, said, same, both okay, and allowed for those differences, because that allows us to explore and share with one another and keep the art alive as opposed to locked in stone. And that's what's supposed to happen. As long as there are certain core concepts, balance, focus, gamaku, power, snap, blah, 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 all of those things back in my first 20 or 30 videos, as long as those core concepts remain and the framework of the kata is recognizable, we're within the parameters, then, as Toma said, both okay. That's how different versions of kata evolved anyway. All right, so, not the Chibana Choshin Anko Itosu Anko lineage, but outside of that, from Yasuichi to Aichi to Toma sensei, different Passai Sho. Variations within Seidokan I presented. I think we're ready. Without further ado, Passai Sho, as I do it, in my dojo. Passai Sho! Passai Sho. That's it for today. Thanks for joining. Like, share, subscribe. You know all this stuff. And until next week, as always, let's keep practicing.